Welcome into episode 251 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. I would say it's a beautiful, well-rested Friday morning, but I do know that Bridget and Scott, Bridget in particular, had a long commute last night going home from the Garden to Attleboro, which normally should be about 40 minutes, but ended up being about 2 hours. Bridget, how are you today?
If anyone else was leaving the Garden when I was leaving the Garden, they got stuck in traffic for 2 hours. I was in the tunnel for 45 minutes, and then the traffic continued after that, and then there was more traffic on 95, and I was like, "This is just great." So we didn't get a chance to record last night, which we originally planned, because I was like, "I'm just gonna have to sleep in the tunnel." So it was the worst traffic I've ever seen. Stuck in 2 hours of traffic at midnight on the way home from the Garden. I'm sure other people are feeling my pain this morning because I'm sure a lot of people had to get up for work. It's Friday. Like, oh man, it was just a disaster.
Scott, I feel like, have you ever seen traffic consistently in Boston? Like, I feel like no matter which way you look, whether it's, Pike eastbound, Pike westbound, 93 north, 93 south, 95 split, like it doesn't, the tunnels, it doesn't matter. Like, there's just been so much repair work and it's crazy. Tread lightly
Yeah,
if you're driving to
I,
Boston.
I had a game earlier this year. So I always park at Sullivan Square Station, take the T. And there's a game earlier this because they've been doing a bunch of construction around there, on ramps, off ramps, stuff around like right around the Sullivan Square area. And earlier this year there was a game where it took, for people who don't know, like if you leave the Sullivan Square parking lot, getting on 93 is like right there. It's like 2 minutes down the road. Well, there's a game earlier this year where that on ramp was closed, and the next two on ramps after it were also closed, and it took me 40 minutes to get onto 93 from Sullivan Square, which is like absolutely insane. But yeah, fortunately that only happened once. But you're right. Like there's construction all over the place, like lane closures, on ramps, off ramps. It's the bridge near me in Lowell, the Rourke Bridge, is now closed at nights, which is fun. Forces me to go around
Yeah,
that. So
there's another tunnel that I keep seeing like, oh, it's closed, and I'm like, I hope I don't accidentally end up going that way. And I was like, shit. Yesterday, I was like,
But
oh shit.
But at least to the Lowell Bridge, Scott. At least out in suburbia, there's like there's different ways to go around traffic and whatnot. But
yeah,
in Boston, there's just a sense of like you're just a sitting duck.
Oh,
yeah.
can I suggest a pro tip for anyone that maybe has like might be going to the Garden soon and leaving and doesn't want to hit road work if it's still going on? Take Staro.
Stay
I
home.
know normally, yeah. Take Staro instead of getting on 93. Like take Staro to the Pike if that works for you, because I should have done that. My GPS was like, it'll be quicker. And I was like, oh, it only says by 3 minutes, and it was probably quicker by an hour. So I would take Staro, and hopefully that's the same. If you're going south, like just go to Staro to the Pike to 95 and just don't even fucking deal with 93 at all.
Now, another place in Boston, it appeared that there was bumper to bumper traffic last night and was kind of a standstill, was the TD Garden Ice, at least for the Bruins, because they were immobile. It seemed like clearly from start to finish, really a pretty poor effort, and I think that's really the only word to describe it. So they lose to the Sabres 3-1. First period, they got outshot something like 19-4, and that it just was more or less the same the rest of the way. They had moments where they pushed back a little bit, but not nearly good enough. All over the ice, takeaways galore from that game. Mostly bad, unfortunately. So why don't we start with our opening shifts, Bridget and Scott, and you guys can take it away.
Yeah, well, the big story, potentially even bigger than the loss, was Charlie McAvoy getting injured early in the third period. Was so basically the like loose puck kind of bouncing away from him towards the boards, and he's trying to beat JJ Peterka to it. Peterka kind of stops short, gives him a reverse hit, and really just elbows him flush in the face, and McAvoy looked a bit wobbly leaving the ice. Went down the tunnel, didn't return. We're recording Friday morning, so the only update was from Jim Montgomery after the game, where he just said it was an upper body injury. He didn't know the extent yet. So we might get more information at practice Friday, which might be happening or have already happened by the time people are listening. So obviously the Bruins will be hoping for some encouraging news there. They're already down a man on defense with Derek Forbort getting put on long-term injured reserve earlier Thursday. Mason Lohrei up. So, if McAvoy's out, then it's probably Ian Mitchell entering the lineup. But obviously, the Bruins did overcome McAvoy's suspension. They went 3-1 during that stretch. It's not like it's completely foreign to them, but he's been their best defenseman this season. Obviously, certainly their best offensive defenseman. Really, the only defenseman who's provided consistent offense. So, would be a big loss if he has to miss any more time.
Yes, and I have so many thoughts about that. But I'm going to get to another player that people might have had questions why he was out of the lineup last night, and that was Matt Poitras, who was a healthy scratch. But when we talked to Coach after the game, he wanted to make it clear that it was not performance related. It was actually related to a strategy that they had in mind from the beginning of the season to try to keep him fresh. And it was a scheduled off day for him because they know this is going to be a bigger workload this year than he's ever dealt with in the past. So they just want to make sure they don't overwork him. And there was a stretch of a while here that the schedule had been pretty busy. And then this was finally there was finally a few days off in between games. And they just decided to give him the extra rest. Apparently it was on the calendar for a while. And when Coach was asked, is this have anything to do with like a rookie wall? Like, have you seen a rookie wall? He said, no rookie wall. It's just a strategy that I'm guessing the training staff had in mind for him for a while.
Yeah, and obviously it's not the end of the world that he goes up to the 9th floor to watch a game, but I feel like they could have used his speed and at least offensive ability last night. So we'll touch back on that. For me, I've been feeling this way for quite some time. And this honestly is not even me trying to be pessimistic. It's just kind of an honest assessment after watching them. And I just think this Bruins team they've been relying on goaltending far too much and been getting bailed out by goaltending far too much. I think that, quite frankly, I just don't think this Bruins team so far is as good as their record indicates that they are, which is that of the second best team in the East and third team in the NHL. It doesn't matter to me if they're first in the NHL or 10th in the NHL. I'm not putting too much stock in where they finish in the regular season as long as they get to the playoffs. And I'm not saying that they can't perform when springtime comes. I guess what I'm saying is that I think this team has a long way to go to be that team, mainly because I think there's a lack of team speed that they're playing with. There's a lack of offensive polish and chemistry, and I think they need some more snarl to their game. I think they're great. Team defense is pretty strong, though. Like I said a minute ago, I think a lot of it's because goaltending is bailing them out a lot, and yeah, I just think that their record at 17-5-1 or something like that, or 17-5-3. Man, I watch this team, and I don't know how you guys feel watching them, but none of the forward lines really have been clicking at all that much this year. Some spurts from the JVR Frederick Coyle line together, moments of Pasternak and Zacha and Marchand and little moments here, but offensively you watch them and it's just like a lot of times outside of Pasternak and Marchand, who literally Marchand's been their only offense the last 2+ games. Actually, the two of them have been their only offense the last 3 games. No, there's not a whole lot there, at least consistently. Coyle's been playing well and Zacha's been producing, but you guys know what I mean. And I don't think there's an easy solution cap wise, personnel wise. It is what it is with this team. How do you guys feel that this team is in reality compared to their record, and do they have a lot more to work on? Do you think?
Yeah, I think they definitely do, and I think we're starting to see some of the inconsistencies that we all expected, but then maybe just got tricked when they didn't show up right away and they get off to such a hot start. But yeah, it's like Zach and Coyle haven't played these roles before, so you're gonna have to there's gonna be some inconsistency. And Coyle gets off to a great start. Now he has 1 point in the last 5 games. Like there's the inconsistency you might have expected earlier. Poitras and Beecher are 2 rookie centers. Like there's going to be a lot of growing pains with those guys trying to hold down those roles on a contending team. You know, defense, like guys haven't been as involved offensively outside of McAvoy. The McAvoy Grizzly pairing hasn't been as dominant as it's been. You had to go bargain bin shopping, and so James Van Riemsdyk's been a great surprise, but like you can't realistically expect him to be a consistent top scorer all season. Like he's in his mid-30s. He's up there. There's probably going to be some inconsistency at times. So I don't really think any of it's surprising. I think if anything's surprising, it's just that it's it took a little while for it to show up, and it wasn't there right from day one. But Brian, to your point about them like not being as good as their record, I think they're 23rd in the NHL in Corsi, which is just percentage of shot attempts. They're like middle of the pack in expected goals, and it's really what their record is it's, and we've talked about it, like it's an indication of how good their goaltending's been by and large. Obviously, both goalies have had a couple off games, if you go back a couple weeks, but for the most part, they've gotten great goaltending, and that's going to carry you to a really good record, and it's going to cover up some other flaws. So I think that's kind of what you're seeing when their goaltending's on, they win, and when it's not, some of the other flaws get exposed.
And I want to bring something up that Montgomery talked about after the game that is completely related to this and maybe has part of the explanation as to why the Buffalo game looked the way it did, at least. And Montgomery said that their practice the day before was the worst practice he's seen the whole year. And that he kind of had suspected that the game might be flat after the way that they practiced the day before. And he said more than once in that post-game press conference, this is on me. Like he was starting to like take responsibility for the fact that maybe there was something like he's not motivating them or doesn't have the right line combinations. He was basically saying, I need to do more in order to get more out of the team. And the one person who had a built-in excuse to maybe not be at his best was Marchand with what he's been dealing with this week. He went to his grandmother's funeral Wednesday, so he missed practice. And apparently practice without him was like in shambles, which should not be the case. But we did see the Bruins last season in the playoffs when their captain was hurt last year. All of a sudden, things looked a little bit like that, like they did against Buffalo. So, they should be able to have, I know it's your captain, but get over that and not need them to be there necessarily, because there's going to be times where somebody's hurt or, I don't know, suspended or whatever. And it seemed like the practice and not having Marchand kind of was part of the reason why Thursday went the way that it did.
Yeah, and I was at that practice, and it probably wasn't even like 15 minutes in that Montgomery stopped a drill, and when we're up in the press box, it's hard to hear like exactly what he says, but it's something along the lines of like not nearly good enough, and he threw in like a 2 days off in there, because as we touched on the last episode, they had an optional on, so they had an off day Monday after the game Sunday night, and then an optional on Tuesday. And basically the explanation was like they thought they needed a little more rest at that point, and that was going to be more valuable. Then you see a flat practice Wednesday, a flat game Thursday, and it's like, well, maybe 2 practices would have been better. It's sort of a fine line that you're trying to walk all season between like real good hard practice time and rest, because it's the schedule's just such a grind. Um, but yeah, it does seem like they didn't get that balance correct this week, at least.
So I don't know why that is. I don't know when you have that time off. It's honestly inexcusable. And for it to happen during practice is one thing. For it to carry over to the game, like, I know Montgomery took onus for that, but it's like, no, that's going to be the players. Like, if you get reprimanded by your coach during practice, you better show up to play for the game when you've had that time off. And look, I think in that room, they know they haven't been playing lights out hockey, and they've been getting away with some victories. And like I said, that's okay. It's a long season, but this team needs to. They have to know internally that they still have an identity. They seem too easy to play against, even when they win. It just, if you're a team and you got the Bruins on your schedule, you're thinking to yourself, okay, definitely got to play well or they'll hurt you. They got some key players that are dynamic, all world, and they won't give you much. But we're not going to leave with a bunch of bruises, and we're going to get our chances. We just got to capitalize. And I'm watching that game last night, and you're playing the Sabres, who are one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference record-wise, and they're playing with a team speed that you would think it was the other way around. Like, you would think that they were a top 5 team in the league and the Bruins were a bottom team in the league. And I'm like thinking to myself, okay, yeah, the Bruins lost some players last year. You lost Bergeron, you lost Krejci, you lost Foligno, none of which were super fast players by any stretch. You lost Taylor Hall, who's a fast player. But my point is, like, yeah, you lost some high-end talent, but in the speed department, you shouldn't be any worse off than you were last year. And I'm looking at these players on the ice, and I'm like, okay, Johnny Beecher is supposed to be a fast player. Jake DeBrusk is supposed to be a fast skater. There's supposed to be players in this team up and down the lineup that have speed, and I'm not seeing anything. And a lot of it's because of poor decision-making and just not playing on their toes. And there's so much more to give from some of these players. And I'm really starting to, the reason why myself and others find Jake DeBrusk polarizing is because you know that the player has the talent and the potential, kind of like what Bridget said last episode with regards to me talking about Lindholm. There's a reason why I get on certain players as much as I do, because those individuals have so much more to offer. And I know there's a hell of a lot more to Jake DeBrusk's game than to just half-ass go into board battles and just go through the motions. And I don't know what it is, but his lack of urgency out there, it's not good enough. And in a game like last night, Kevin Shattenkirk, James Van Riemsdyk, Morgan Geekie, those guys aren't speedsters. I don't expect them to be flying up the ice. But when I look at a Bruins team that's lacking team speed, I'm looking at the players that should be skating with flying colors, and why they're not. I honestly don't have the answer. And I'm really kind of getting annoyed and fed up with people defending players about, the underlying numbers say that they're not hurting their team, but Jake DeBrusk is he needs to start doing something, or else he's hurting his team, because he is paid to produce and he's not. And I don't see enough battle effort there from him and a couple of other players. And I don't know if I'm being hard on these players. I just think I'm kind of assessing what I've been watching for a period of time. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Yeah, well, I think that whole first line was really disappointing Thursday. Like, I thought, when they first split up Marchand, Zacha, Pasternak, and they put DeBrusk up there, I thought that's kind of seemed to spark everyone involved. And DeBrusk, Zacha, Pasternak, I thought it had an especially good game Saturday in Toronto. Quieter Sunday against Columbus, and then basically just a complete no-show the first period against Buffalo. And in the first period, that line when that line was on the ice, the Bruins got outshot 8-1. Like that can't happen with your top line against the Sabres after 3 days off. And just like watching them, it was like I think all three of them, not just DeBrusk, I think all three of them were just kind of floating, and it was like you're the first line on one of the best teams in the NHL. Like you got to bring it, like you guys set the tone for the team. It can't just be Brad Marchand, your captain, who does that. So that was really disappointing from that whole line, because it's like you can look at the whole team and say, oh, well, the whole team came out flat. But when that happens, like you look to your leaders and your best players to provide a spark to go against that, to bring something. And that line really did. And I didn't really think the Marchand Coyle Heinen line did early on either, honestly. Like I thought the whole top six was pretty quiet, and that's disappointing, because like those are the guys that, if you're gonna expect anyone to bring it or to find a way to kind of drag themselves out of a slow start, those are the guys you look to. And it really didn't happen until way too late in the game, when it was, just complete desperation.
Yeah, and I mean, I put our who's up, who's down graphic up when Brian started talking about DeBrusk, because it kind of leads right into what, this segment. Brian's, thinks DeBrusk is down. Scott, you mentioned the top line, and which DeBrusk is part of, being a down, but also that, I mean, on just in general, the entire team was worse in the Buffalo game than what we've seen, right? Like the entire team was flat. But if I'm gonna say like who really kind of disappeared in the game, this is someone that Scott talked about before. The third line in general, I know they're missing their center, Matt Poitras, but I thought that the third line, like JVR, Geeky, Frederick, they weren't super noticeable at all. I thought they were very, very quiet. I thought that it didn't look like it was clicking. I know Geeky can play center, and that, he's an adequate center, but it didn't look good. And so I'm going to say down on that, just that combination, that trio, because they were just kind of invisible. They weren't bringing the energy. Like we know Frederick can bring energy. We know JVR can, create havoc in front of the net. Don't think he did that at all in the game against Buffalo. So like what these guys' strengths are on the third line, you just didn't really see them using it in that game. So I'm down on them.
Yeah, I think, but like looking at just how quiet the secondary scoring has gone, and by secondary scoring I mean everyone not named Brad Marchand. To me, like, time to put Coyle back with JVR and Frederick. That's been a solid line. When you put them back together, it's sparked them before, and all three of those guys have been pretty quiet. So I would say get them back together, and then give Marchand, Poitras, Heinen, a run together as a line. Like we saw the one game against San Jose, and we all preface that by saying, yeah, it was against San Jose. But like it looked encouraging, and then we really haven't seen it since. So I think when you're at this point where, you're struggling to get offense going, you might as well give that a look, getting Poitras back in fresh after a night off. And again, mostly just because, like, I mean, Coyle's been playing next to Marchand and has still been quiet. Like some Marchand's goals have come sort of away from that line or on the power play. So I just think, I know like people always like to kind of criticize Montgomery for changing the line so much, but when stuff's not working, like, all for it. So I wouldn't mind at all seeing different lines Friday in practice and Saturday's game.
Yeah,
well, that's not even different lines. Those are lines that we had said, like those are lines that we thought might be, you know, worth establishing and then went away from. So it's not like it's like, oh, you know, these are new. Like this was an idea they had before and they worked, and then like maybe let's go back to that.
Yeah, I mean, and Marchand's success, and Scott, you just kind of hit on it. Like, it has not been from 5-on-5, you know, generated chances. I mean, the first goal back in Toronto is, you know, Nylander slips at center ice, and then he and Tavares just don't back check. So
yeah, and it's 3-on-3. It's
3-on-3, and Marchand is all by himself because even in 3-on-3, Bridget, the Leafs don't even back check. And then the hat trick against was it Columbus? Yeah. You know, 2 are power play goals. One was an even strength goal that Coyle and Heinen did figure on. And then the goal against the Sabres was a ricochet off a shin pad or a skate, and it's like, okay, I'll take it, but that wasn't from a you know, a place of purpose, really. So it's kind of like you take that with a grain of salt, and you know, you score a goal, never take credit from somebody. But you know, if you're really being honest about it, like last night's Sabres goal was lucky. And my point is, it's not coming from chemistry with their players. And you know, I would agree. I would put Coyle back with Van Riemsdyk and Frederick. And you know, I also think that, you know, I don't think Zaka and Pasternak have been dynamic. I think they obviously have chemistry from last year a little bit, and I think Montgomery trusts that. And if you were to put Zaka between Marchand and DeBrusque to try to emulate the structure of a line they had last year with Bergeron, and then maybe try Poitras with Pasternak, but that's a defensive probably nightmare, and I don't even know who the third person on that line would be. So it's, you know, they're short personnel wise by a top 6 player for sure. But like I said, some of the players that are there, they just you need more of them. And you know, like you at this point and not to go back to DeBrusque because I'm honestly not talking about him, but he's 27. He's supposed to be somebody who's, you know, if not driving a line by himself, like he should be a big part of driving a line. He's in his prime at 27 years old. He's got 10 points in 24. It's just not good enough. And Heinen has an offensive ceiling, and it just there's a lot to be desired offensively for this team, and defensively. You know, I've talked to Lindholm a bunch this year. He's been underwhelming compared to what we expect of him. And Scott, I noticed that you put down Matt Grzelcyk is also a down. So, you know, goaltending, and especially you watched that first period last night, they get outshot 19-4 and a bunch of grade A's, and Allmark just makes you forget about it because he just kicks them all away. And it's like they could have been down 3-4-0. And you know what? Most teams without that goaltending are. And the Bruins get away with it time and time again. And I don't know if they're truly learning these lessons because of it. But Grzelcyk, Scott, you put him down. Bridget, do you have a thought on him as well? And anything else I just said, maybe?
Yeah, well, I mean, on Grzelcyk, I just think he's not playing like the way that we've seen him in the past. And, you know, maybe part of it is still coming back from injury. He's not 100% yet, but like you know, he's got a handful of games under his belt since then. You know, it's at some point you kind of run out of a little bit of grace period. And now if McAvoy misses any time, they're really going to need him to step up because now you're down McAvoy and Forbert. Presumably he's going to have to play more minutes if that's the case. And, you know, it just seems like we talk about the defense in general not being involved offensively. I really haven't seen Grzelcyk involved much, whether that's, you know, moving around the offensive zone, pinching down, even just getting shots through, like just really quiet there. And then defensively, you know, I don't think he's making like glaring mistakes or anything, but he's had some sloppy breakouts, like not the only one, but yeah, just feel like his game's been a little off for a while, and that pairing with him and McAvoy has been a little off, and that's not all Grzelcyk's fault. I think defensively McAvoy's game has been a little lower than his usual standard too. But you know, that's a pairing that at least in the regular season we're used to seeing them be dominant. We're used to seeing the Bruins, have constant possession, constant offensive zone time when they're on the ice, and that really hasn't been the case this year. Not nearly as much. I think the Bruins have been outscored 5-3 on the season when they've been on the ice, and like getting outscored is one thing that's a rarity in itself, but only having 3 goals when they've been on the ice and like it's like 170 minutes or something, like it kind of just tells you like how little offense the Bruins are generating when they're out there, and normally that's such a strength for that pairing. And I don't know exactly why that is, that they're off, but they clearly have been.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just agree with you, Scott, there, and add that potentially a lingering injury could be affecting the way Grizzlies playing. We heard from last practice when Forbert was placed on long-term IR that it was just like a re-aggravation, or just that the injury that he was suffering with earlier in the season wasn't fully healed and that he needed more time off to heal the injury. So Forbert's going to be out until, I think, Scott, you said like New Year's Eve or longer. Like the first day he's eligible to come back, I think, is New Year's Eve. Yeah. Probably won't see him again till January. And if McAvoy's out for an extended period of time, that means you're once again down 2 of your top 6 defensemen. We've talked about it in the past. Luckily, the Bruins do have 2 extra defensemen they could throw in Lohrei and Mitchell. So it just Lohrei kind of getting thrown into the fire again. We think he's NHL caliber, but we thought maybe he would benefit from being in Providence. He wasn't there very long before getting called back up, which is, it's good for him. He gets to go right back up in Boston. And when I asked him, he said he felt like nothing had changed. Like he fit right back in. I by no means think that he was the problem in the Buffalo game. I think he actually had one shift where he faked a guy out, got like the guy overcommitted, his defender fell to the ice, and then he made like this move around him and got a shot off. I was like, oh, there's a little flash of offense the Bruins could be looking for from the back end. Puck didn't go in the net, but he's trying. Like he was taking control of that play when he was on the ice. And that shift that him and Shattenkirk were out there for, the Bruins had possession the entire time in the offensive end of the ice. And it actually transitioned into the next shift too. Like they were able to maintain possession with him out there and him getting involved in the offense. So I thought we saw a little bit of like, okay, yeah, this is what he could bring. Coach basically after the game, when he was asked about Lohrei, said he didn't like anyone's game. Like he wouldn't specifically say anything about Lohrei, and he's right. Like everybody was flat and probably wasn't playing up to their standards. But yeah, I guess I agree with you, Scott. I don't know if I have another down. I do have a thought about the goaltending since we've brought it up so many times. And that is that Swayman is out with illness currently. And when asked after the game, Montgomery said, like, would you actually put Brendan Bussey in? Because that's who they called up and was, the backup against Buffalo. And he was kind of like, well, we're going to reevaluate, but probably not going to put in Bussey. So it's probably going to be another Allmark game. It's a 1:00 game against the Coyotes, which, so yeah, it looks like Swayman's not going to be available Saturday, and it looks like Allmark is going to be back in there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. Like, for all we know, Swayman could be back on the ice at practice Friday, but yeah, I imagine though, recovering from illness, like I would think just give Allmark a second straight start, anyways. He was tested Thursday. He did face a high volume of shots, so I don't totally dismiss, a little bit of a quick turnaround to Saturday afternoon, but I feel like he can probably handle it after, he basically had like 4 days between starts before that, so shouldn't, as long as Swayman's back in like the next couple days at some point, I think you're probably fine, because then the Bruins after Saturday are off until Wednesday again, so not the worst time to have a goalie be sick, I guess.
Scott, I know the the officiating, thought it was fine. What did you make of Peterka's hit on McAvoy?
I didn't like it. I mean, I get that like reverse hits happen all the time, and you can say, maybe McAvoy should have been more prepared, but nonetheless, Peterka is the one initiating contact. I think when you watch the replay, like to me, it seems pretty clear that the puck's going towards the boards, and Peterka takes a step kind of towards McAvoy instead of towards the puck. Like he's clear. I saw some people trying to make the case like, oh, he's just bracing himself for a hit from McAvoy. All right, but he's still leaning into it. Like it's not in like a natural motion where he's going for the puck and also trying to shield off McAvoy. Like he clearly takes a step towards him. And to me, when you do that, then the onus is on you to avoid head contact. I don't think McAvoy's head like drops suddenly or changes level or anything. I think Peterka is going for a reverse hit and just lines it up wrong. I don't think he was trying to elbow McAvoy in the face, but that's what ends up happening. He catches him with an elbow square to the face. And when you're the one initiating contact, it's on you to make sure that doesn't happen. So I think it clearly should have been a penalty. It could have been interference. It could have been elbowing, hit to the head, like whatever you want to call it. There was it at the very least should have been a 2-minute minor. And I wouldn't be surprised if player safety takes a look. I guess I'd be a little surprised if it results in a suspension, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a fine on it. But yeah, I do not like it.
I don't know if I'm in the minority on this because, like Scott, I saw your tweet about it, and I know like you just gave a pretty strong opinion that you thought that it wasn't a clean hit. I actually think, like, in all honesty, obviously he didn't mean to do it, but I also think that that's just like in the course of the game. Like I do think he was bracing for the contact. I think he saw it. I think he was trying to get ahead of it. I don't think that he targeted the head. I don't. Maybe I'm in the minority, but when I saw it, it even like slowed down on the replay. It just kind of looked like a hockey play to me. I think you probably both disagree with me. I don't think that it's suspendable. Definitely not suspendable. Maybe it could have been an interference call in real time, but I don't think that it was like as dirty as people are making it out to be, because the intent wasn't there. And reverse hits happen all the time. I've seen people. It's a strategy for like self-preservation as well. It's like, okay, this person's coming in to hit me. I have to make sure I'm ready for it. And it's just, I didn't think there should be outrage about it. I think there should be concern for McAvoy for what actually happened, but I don't think that like saying it was dirty is a little bit too far for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think all can be true, right? Like, I think that I think it's a typical hockey play. I don't think that there was intent to be dirty, but at the same time, while those two things can be true, it could still constitute a minor penalty over the course of play, and I think it should have been for either pick your poison, like Scott said. It was an elbow, and if we're going by the 2023 NHL rulebook, I mean, it's an elbow and it's certainly interference. Is it a major interference if this is 10, 15 years ago? No, but it definitely should have been a minor penalty. I don't think it was borderline. I think it was a minor penalty for either one of those, but I don't think there was intent to injure, and I don't think it was dirty, to your point, Bridget. So I just think it was a missed call, and McAvoy is obviously hurting the play, so we're talking about it more. But yeah, I mean, there is contact to his head with the elbow, not in a suspension type of way, but in a minor penalty type of way. Like elbowing is a penalty, and I think it was a missed call, but I didn't love it. But yeah, I think what you guys both say can be true.
Yeah, and to me, I think there's a couple things that separate it a little from a quote unquote typical reverse hit. One is that usually when there's a reverse hit, the guy throwing the reverse hit already has possession. And so that's a situation where everyone's expecting contact. Either the guy coming in is going to throw the hit, or he at least knows like, hey, this guy's bracing for a hit. I better be ready. in this case, I actually don't think McAvoy was lining Peterka up for a hit. I think he was trying to get to the puck. And I think that's why he gets caught by surprise, is because McAvoy thinks he's in a foot race to a loose puck. And all of a sudden Peterka stops and cuts him off. And so that's a little different than like Peterka already having possession up against the boards and McAvoy coming at him. And then the second thing is just like, yeah, even if you're throwing a reverse hit, which we can, debate, whether that's whatever, whether it's okay, where that crosses the line, whatever, you still can't elbow a guy in the face like that. That's still a penalty no matter what. So, yeah, I think, like I said, I didn't like it. And clearly McAvoy was caught by surprise. He just was not expecting contact there. Maybe he should have been, but that, kind of feels to me a bit like victim blaming. I think he was trying to make a hockey play, and Peterka caught him off and caught him in the head. And intent isn't really supposed to matter for hits to the head. Like hits to the head are banned, period. So even though he wasn't trying to do it, he did it.
Well, that's what blew my mind about the Jacob Trouba decision by the league to not suspend him. Billy Jaffe was mentioning on, I think it may have been the Morning Brew podcast, but he had like an informed opinion from the league that they were like, oh, everybody's only watching the 2-second clip of the stick hitting Frederick and not the entire play. And he was like, the league felt that the intent wasn't to do what happened when you watch the entire play. And I'm like, intent, like the intent, I don't want to say it doesn't play a small factor, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like if the action occurs, right? Like if you like, okay, for example, when I say intent can matter, like Marty McSorley, slashing Donald Brashear in the head, there's intent there to send him to prison, right? But that doesn't mean that you still can't be suspended on a unintentional play where somebody gets hit in the head with a stick. Like, so the whole intent thing, to Scott, to your point, like intent, there's still a responsibility for, negligence or lack of intent doesn't always absolve somebody from what actually happens.
And also, let's just be real. There was definitely intent. Like there was 100% intent. Like you could see it boiling over. Like him and Frederick, that was just, they were both frustrating each other, and there was intent there. And I think everybody on the Bruins side of things knows it should have been a suspension, but he's the captain of the Rangers. Maybe it's not good for business. Who knows? Like who knows the real reason why that wasn't a suspension, even though it was definitely a suspendable play. I don't know if you guys saw this weird thing that happened to Jeremy Lauzon yesterday. Someone took just a slap shot point blank at him and he took it hard in the leg and left the game. And it was like, what are we doing? It was
Austin Watson of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Predators are winning 4-1, 5-1, and it was in the closing seconds of the game, and Watson just tees up, steps into a full wind-up slap shot from his own blue line, and Lauzon's like standing at the red line and just drills him in the ankle. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen any like update on Lauzon, but he was clearly hobbling and in a lot of pain. And it's like, it was a play where it's like, okay, even if Lauzon's not standing there, like you're probably about to get tackled by 4 guys if you take a slap shot at the buzzer in a 4-1 game anyways. So it's like, yeah, like what the hell was the point of that?
Yeah, it was brain dead. It's interesting because it just so happens that earlier in the day yesterday, I came across the video of Daniel Alfredson winding up and taking a slap shot at Scott Niedermayer in the 2007 Stanley Cup Finals. Very similar situation, except this one was on purpose. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, wow, that'd be so like crazy to see something like that obvious happen today. And then like in today's game, and then it literally happened last night. But it was, if you watch the replay, it does look unintentional. It just looks like a brain dead decision by Watson, but Bridget, you mentioned Trouba being the captain of the Rangers and being bad for business, maybe to suspend him. Have you guys noticed this year that there doesn't seem to be any like captaincy respect uptick for Marchand with the officials around the league? It seemed like normally when a captain approaches like the refs in game and whatever, like there's a bit of a level of respect between the two, and you would think that having the C on his jersey and let's be honest, being in the league for the duration he has, as well as cleaning up his game, would garner a certain level of respect with the officiating. Doesn't seem to have gotten that that boost. Have you guys noticed that as well? The refs still seem to be annoyed with him like it's 2013.
Yeah, for sure. I think he still has that reputation where he's just not going to get the benefit of the doubt. And I think you even saw that last night. The penalty he gets called for in the third period, he goes to throw a hit on Yoki Haru, and Yoki Haru like tries to spin off it at the last moment and ends up getting upended, kind of going ass over tea kettle. And Marchand gets called for a penalty, and it's like that would have just been a perfectly clean hit if Yoki Haru doesn't spin at the last second. And they had like the rest had let everything go in that third period, including the hit on McAvoy, including a hook on Charlie Coyle right in front of the net. And it's like, all right, well, I guess it's just, this is just going to be like a Wild West third period. And then they call that, and it's like, yeah, you do. Like, you have to wonder if it's like, all right, did they call that because it's Brad Marchand? Like, would any other player on the ice have just gotten away with that and play on? Yeah, and, we talked about this a little bit at the time it happened, but, like, a little bit of it, Marchand still kind of brings on himself. There was the incident early in the season where, he clearly got hooked. There was no call. And then he kind of kept going at the ref for like a good 5 to 10 seconds after. And I think the ref gave him like one or two looks over, shouts, and then called him. And it's like, yeah, that's probably a situation where like you got to expect that, the third time you look back and say something, you're going to get called. But yeah, it feels like there's been a bunch of calls that he has not gotten this year. He's tied for the team lead in penalties drawn, but really feels like it should be even more than that, because I think it takes a lot to foul Brad Marchand and get a penalty for it.
He's got to be up there in penalties taken as well. Like I haven't checked, but he takes a lot of penalties too. If we could do a penalty plus minus, he'd be probably even.
Wow, something tells me that the Wizard of Pod, Scott, will grab that for us in the next couple of minutes if I can buy him some time.
Yeah, he's just looking around. He's always up on the 9th floor, like dealing with my BS, including like me singing at him. But I'm also always like, hey, how do you use natural stat trick? Please help.
Bridget, you are very smart, because Brad Marchand has drawn 13 penalties, tied with Matt Poitras for the team lead. Brad Marchand has also taken a team high 13 penalties. He is exactly even.
See, sometimes we pay attention and we know what we're talking about. So he's a 0 plus minus.
Yep.
Let's take this time to circle back all the way to your opening shift, Bridget, with Poitras being scratched. How do you feel about that decision? Planned scratching, apparently, but how do you feel about it?
Well, I think if it was planned, then there's not much more we need to talk about, because we've been on this from the beginning. Transitioning into the NHL as a 19-year-old comes with its physical challenges, and if that's what if he needs 5 days off at just like now and then, I assume it kind of sounded to me like this is also going to be maybe a once a month thing or once every 2 months thing, that he's going to get a little bit of rest, because it's just a strategy to make sure his body is recovering to conditions that he hasn't been put in before. Like we talk about this with kids coming out of college as well. The college slate of games is not nearly as demanding as an NHL slated games. So you're playing a lot more often. I believe Guelph also played mostly just weekends. So you're talking about getting those 5 days off. And so that's what his body's used to. And I don't see an issue with trying to help him just acclimate at maybe a level that could end up avoiding injury for him or fatigue. I think it's built in to try and stop a rookie wall from happening, not because there's a rookie wall.
So
Yeah.
so Scott, there's the player personnel perspective of it, which Bridget just mentioned, and that's totally valid and checks all the boxes. I agree with it all. But not seeing him in the lineup last night, Scott, would you say that was a reminder of how welcomed his speed, youth, and offensive creativity when he's on his game is to this lineup this year?
Yeah, and especially a game like last night where I thought the Sabres like really just tried to clog up the middle, and sometimes it takes some creativity to break through that. And Poitras is obviously one of their most creative offensive playmakers. So yeah, like there were times where you kind of find yourself wondering, could one of his passes, like one of his, just like his vision to see an opening somewhere, unlock that defense, beat two men with one pass type thing. As far as the scratch and this plan, it seems to me like it's probably something that's been like something that they've maybe changed their mind on a little as the year's gone on, because I remember early in the year when they played 2 games against Anaheim, Montgomery was asked about what the Ducks are calling the quote unquote Leo plan, with Leo Carlson, their number 2 overall pick, where he's been scratched a lot more. He's been scratched in 8 of Anaheim's 25 games this season. And it's like 1 or 2 games every week and a half or 2 weeks that he gets scratched for. And it's not just rest. Like he'll get more off ice work, strength and conditioning stuff when he's not playing a game that night. And Montgomery, while answering your question about why you decided to sit Poitras, Bridget, mentioned that it was an opportunity for him to build some strength. And so I think there might be some of that going on too, where it's like, I don't think Thursday is necessarily like a rest day for Poitras, but we're going to focus on some off ice stuff. And we also saw a video that Adam Pellerin tweeted out of Poitras working one-on-one with Jim Montgomery before morning skate, which in retrospect, probably was a little bit of a tip off that something was up or he might not play that night, because sometimes like those guys that get extra work in before are, end up being the healthy scratches. So yeah, it seems like there's things they want to work with him on that they feel like, sometimes subbing that in for a game might be more beneficial. It's not going to be nearly as often as what Anaheim's doing with the Leo Carlson. That's a team that does not have Stanley Cup aspirations. That's out of the playoff picture right now. Matt Poitras helps the Bruins win games, and they're still trying to win as many games as possible. So it's not going to be once every week and a half or 2 weeks, but to Bridget's point, it is something we might see, at least a few more times going forward this season.
Yeah, and that video of him working with Montgomery was mostly working on his shot before like morning skate. It was Montgomery just kept teeing him up, like pass one-timer, wrister. Like he was just getting a bunch of reps in shooting. Maybe that's something that he's focusing on. We know he scored a few times in preseason, hasn't gotten as many goals that he was on pace for because he was on a ridiculous pace in the preseason. So it's fallen off during the regular season a little bit. So maybe just working on that, and obviously strength and building size and putting on weight have been things we've talked about with him too, because he is light and he does get bumped around. And maybe it was also that 50-50 battles stat, Scott, like he's losing some. And I think it comes back to size in a lot of the cases. It's not like he's making stupid plays. It's not like he's not hustling or doesn't have the effort. Like sometimes it purely has come down to like losing the weight class battle and being bumped off a puck because physically, like he's given up 15, 20 pounds on a guy. So it happens. And it's something that will continue to build for him. And I'm not, at first I was concerned until after I asked coach, well, what was the reason behind it? I was like, okay, maybe there's just no love for the rookies this week. Like Beecher got healthy scratch, and I'm like, now Poitras, but it turned out to not be performance related.
Yeah, I think the goal for him is for the Bruins is to kind of see an evolution of just size and strength from the time he's 19 until call it 22, 3, 4, like you kind of saw with Pasternak. I mean, you look at Pasternak now, and he kind of looks like one of the more filled out forwards on the team, and in any game he kind of plays in. If you take away like height difference between players, but when you go back and watch him at 18, he looks just that 18. So hopefully, with the age, Poitras will get that maturity. I do have I got to take a quick trip to fashion land here, and I want to throw it right to you guys. I've been trying. We're a quarter of the way through the season. I've been trying real hard to. Thank you for the banner. I really have been. And when the Bruins are on the road wearing their whites, and when they're in these original 6 games in the third jerseys, I feel like I'm watching the Bruins, even though they have the actual metallic gold on the whites. They get away with it on the whites. Guys, I've been trying for 2.5 months now. I can't shake the fact that I don't feel like I'm watching the Bruins when they're at the Garden. I don't. And I want to get your opinions because you guys are there live and in person. How do you feel now? They're so dull. Every single night, like the uniform matchup just isn't great because I just don't like these Colorado State uniforms that they have going. I just don't like them. What do you guys think?
I've never liked the homes, and I wondered if at some point they would grow on me a little, and they haven't. I think if anything, where I've ended up, Brian, is just kind of like indifference. It's like I've just begrudgingly accepted that I'm gonna have to see them this year, and it's almost certainly just a 1-year thing. It's for the Centennial season, and hopefully it leads to better things next year. But yeah, I think all the original problems I had with them have not changed. I don't love the gold. I don't love like the way the shoulders are. I don't love the numbers. Like just none of it. Like you said, like it doesn't look like a Bruins jersey. Like it doesn't look like you're watching the Bruins. It looks like, I don't know, like I've made like the Western Michigan comparison before because it's kind of similar colors, more gold, but yeah, they have not grown on me though. That's for sure.
Yeah, like I think we've compared them to like the Vegas color scheme as well. You guys always have so much more strong opinions about this than I do.
It's just
I'm always just like, they're jerseys.
There's so much
like,
black.
They're not the best. They're not. Yeah, at first I was thrown off by the sparkle. It's but I'm somebody that likes to wear sparkle, so
But there's just so much black too, because like with the striping pattern that they went with, like the million stripes, they're all so thin, and half of them are white. It's a lot of black, and what's not black is just dull. And Scott, you kind of said it perfectly. Like I've never liked them, especially the black ones, right? And I've really tried to just like kind of, to your point, just accept them and hope they grow on me just for the year, kind of knowing that they never were going to, but I just want to skip ahead to next season and get their actual yellow back in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, when they're wearing their whites, for some reason they get away with it because I do think a big part of the homes is just it's all so much black. And then yeah, so I just I'm watching last night, and it really stood out to me because they're playing like shit. They're getting outshot by the Sabres 20-4. They're slow as molasses, and I'm just like I'm watching like these uniforms. I'm like, I don't even want to watch this game. Like, it's a boring game. It's boring uniforms. Like,
It's a deal breaker for
and-
Brian.
Yeah,
Get
Total
out of
deal
here.
And the Sabres look damn good. Love those Sabres uniforms.
Right.
And what did I say? What did I say to you yesterday, Scott? What did I say? So there's going to be a fashion segment, isn't there?
It's true. Yeah.
Well, like
Yeah.
last week, they're like, it's so polarizing because they'll go to Toronto and wear the third jerseys in Toronto on Hockey Night in Canada, and you're like, yeah, this is a sick uniform matchup. And then they'll go home and they'll play the Sharks, and they'll be wearing these god awful black uniforms, and the Sharks have teal buckets on, and I'm like,
which are apparently unstoppable. The Sharks suddenly are like on fire.
I'm like, what club college game are we watching right now on TD Garden Ice? What D3 Super 8 championship is going on right now on the TD Garden Ice?
It's like LIU.
Yeah.
But by the way, I think that the bar was set too high last year. And now they just woefully missed the bar because the Pooh Bears, the Meth Bear, everybody liked the Bears. Everybody liked those jerseys last year. And then you come around with this and it's like,
I'm hoping
last year's better. We got maybe spoiled a little bit last year.
I'm just hoping that like they've heard this. I'm hoping that the organization heard the collective like excitement about what we all thought the uniforms were going to be, and then they were like, oh, they're going to be sorely disappointed. And now like just like the public, like, these are brutal, and like I'm hoping
what
that
you're
they're
saying
just gonna...
is you're hoping they got all of your DMs and like emails and physical letters.
Yes. Yeah. But I do think, to be fair, I think it's more than just me. I think it's a lot of people. But what I've learned over the last couple of years, and Bridget, as you will point out, whether it's me DMing USA Hockey or the Bruins, I'm always let down. So
that really happened
next year
way, in case people weren't around, because that was like at least a year ago. He really did that.
Oh yeah. But I'm just gonna I'm gonna change my ways, and I'm gonna go into next year expecting that they're going to have a statement saying the Centennial uniforms are the Bruins' main uniforms, permanent uniforms from here on out. I'm going to get ready for the disappointment. That way, when they come around and it's not the case, I'll be happy.
And then you're going to have to be a fan of some other team.
I was going to say,
I will be.
Especially if they win the cup, like you can't change jerseys if you win it all. So
if they keep these jerseys next year, I will be the biggest, Arizona Coyotes fan or something. I'm just gonna change my ways. Or the Ducks. If the Ducks go back to the Mighty Ducks, and there's the Mighty Ducks plug, Bridget, that I always do, then I'll change.
We knew we were getting to the Ducks jerseys. Yeah. It always comes back to the Ducks jerseys.
By the way, just to quickly preview Saturday's game, the red hot Arizona Coyotes 5-game winning streak. Connor Ingram, like playing legitimately like one of the best goalies in the NHL. So not your older brothers, Arizona Coyotes. I think people see that on the schedule and think, pushover game, but yeah, that's not going to be the case. And
didn't they beat like all of the last 5 or something Stanley Cup champions in the last stretch?
Yeah, like they beat Vegas, Colorado, Tampa. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Coyotes were the ones who I think last year, didn't they like halt like a Bruins like 12 or 13 game win streak or something? It was something like that.
With that fucking last second goal or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like
they play hard.
Like 0.2 seconds left.
They play hard, and they've gotten some young talent in there. So I'm actually looking forward to watching the Coyotes. But all right, guys. Any final talking points?
Nope. I gotta get going for practice. Just heard a trash truck backing up, so my ride's here.
Oh, good.
All right, Scott. Skate hard out there. Okay.
Garbage.
Yeah, just throw myself right in the back, and free ride. Don't have to pay for Uber.
I didn't know they revoked your license, Scott. Oh goodness.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you very soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
not in front of a screen, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.